Hello, and welcome. Today we're going to be looking at Superpowers. Superpowers is a really interesting unit. It's a new unit for yourselves, and it's one of the two units that usually make up Year 13. And the reason why it's so much an exciting unit is because it's one that's relevant to the world in which we live in today, and it's one that's ever changing within the current global landscape. Now, today's unit is going to be focusing on who are the superpowers of today, and we're going to be looking at a range of different issues and factors that influence them. Now, where does it fit into the course? It builds basically on AO1, AO2 and AO3 knowledge, as all units do. And what's really important about this one is that it enables you to draw critical conclusions, and it allows you to analyse and interpret sources. Now, before we really start and introduce superpowers, what I've got is a video clip for you to watch on how America became a superpower, and then I've got some reading for you to do off the internet. When you watch these videos, it'd be useful if you could note down some key points. You may wish to do that on a blank slide or a flashcard, which you can refer to at a later date. Pause the video now to do that. What I've also got for you on this slide is a YouTube clip that takes you to the Prisoners of Geography book. It's a really interesting book that talks about how the geography of the world influences the political and global landscape we find ourselves in. It's an interesting video. I suggest you pause that and watch that now. Again, note some key points down. It is 8 minutes long, but it's well worth a watch. So the key objectives for today's lesson then, in terms of us considering what are or who are the superpowers of today, you need to know how to classify superpowers, regional powers and hyperpowers. You need to understand how superpowers maintain their superpower status and what they're referred to as mechanisms of hard and soft power. And you've got to evaluate and understand over time how things such as economic, political, military, demographics and access to natural resources influences a country's ability to stay a superpower. Now, it fits into the A-level spec of inquiry question 1. What are superpowers and how have they changed over time? And it fits into key idea 7.1. So by the end of the next couple of lessons, you need to be able to answer who are the superpowers of today, how is that they're maintaining their superpower status, and whether these are effective in assisting them to do that. Some key terms for you to look at are geostrategic, regional powers, and superpowers. So, before I give you a definition of what a superpower is or a regional power is, on the next slide, what I'd like you to do is to list underneath that bar that's along the bottom where you think the different images would fit. So which one is a superpower, which one is an emerging superpower, and which one is a regional power. Do that on the next slide now. You may wish to pause the video. So, when we're looking at our definition of a superpower, it's a nation with the means to project its power and influence anywhere in the world and to become a dominant global source. And at the moment, you've got the USA, which is the world's only superpower. Some would consider it to be a hyperpower. And historically, there have been different superpowers, such as the USSR and the British Empire. I'd like you to pause the video and find a definition for a hyperpower and provide an example of a country that fits that model. Please paste that into your PowerPoint. So if you were thinking about what are the characteristics for countries to become superpowers, what are some of the things that you would consider? Hopefully, you would look at the following. Economic power. You need a strong economy to allow you to invest and develop. You need a strong political system, whether that's communism or democracy. Where there's high levels of tension, infighting, civil war, superpower status cannot be achieved. You need access to natural resources, because that's enabling you to develop and gain wealth. You need a strong military power to exert your influence on the world. And you need a large amount of cultural influence, whether that's through TNCs, whether that's through diplomacy, foreign aid. All of these things are required to achieve superpower status. Now, a task that you're going to complete using the following slides relates to this blank table. You're going to have to put the mechanism of power down the table, down the first column, for example, military power, diplomacy. You need to tell me whether that's hard or soft power. You need to tell me whether it helps it maintain superpower status. What are the problems with this mechanism of maintaining power? And give an example of a country that's using it. And to complete this table, there is information on the following slides. You may need to pause the video as we go through so you can go back and complete your table. So this one's talking about GDP, which is economic. Picture of an aircraft carrier representing military power. Use this to help you complete the table. Some interesting points here about military power that you may wish to note down as additional information in your table. Pause the video now, watch the short video clip on military expenditure, and what will be interesting for you to see is the rate in which military expenditure is growing upon nations that are competing to develop superpower status. This slide relates to natural resources, so the accessibility of oil wealth. This shows you economic growth per region. And what's interesting to see is the high growth rates seen within India, Kenya, Uganda. This slide here relates to diplomacy, so you might need to do a little bit of wider reading on how diplomacy influences superpower status, but that is really important for you to look at. This slide relates to TNCs, so this is your soft power, your cultural influence, and what's really interesting for you to see is the extent at which TNCs developed within particularly the US have influenced the world in which we live. This slide here relates to religion, so that's a soft power influencer. Now, once you've finished your table, you have one final task to do. On Teams, I've uploaded an article for you to read. You need to read through that article, which looks at the effectiveness of soft and hard power in maintaining power relations. You need to highlight it to show the strengths and the weaknesses of the different methods. And at the end of the article, you need to answer the question, which one of these you think is the most important in maintaining international influence? Is it military? Is it political? Is it cultural? Or is it access to natural resources? And what's important is underneath that article you provide that justified opinion. So you've told me which one you think it is, and you've told me why. And I've given you this nice summary slide here that highlights some of the different ways in which nations try and maintain power. So, what you should have completed today, you should have key terms noted down, such as hyperpower and superpower. These could be in a slide within the PowerPoint. You need a completed table that is detailed and developed. You need to have annotated the newspaper article that I've uploaded that looks at hard and soft power, and provided a justified opinion on which mechanism of power you feel is the most significant. And you need to have watched all the video clips and done the preparatory reading in advance of the lesson. Thank you.